Well, in Hall of the Mountain King, you created an empire, and now it's about to be destroyed. No, please come back. You were better. Fall of the Mountain King is an area control style of game where you are trolls. Yes, you're once again trolls, but this time you are being fought by gnomes. Those friggin' gnomes. All those gnomes coming into your troll kingdom. And you gotta stomp on all the gnomes as quickly as possible before your entire civilization collapses. Although, according to the title, it seems like that's what's gonna happen anyway. This is a game that is unified with the Hall of the Mountain King series by two things: name and publisher. And that's pretty much it. Well, I mean, I guess art. I guess art style as well. But they're two very completely different games. And if you enjoy area control games that can be a little bit fiddly, well, then you might like Hall of the Mountain King or Fall of the Mountain King. And god damn it, that's not the first time I'm going to do that. So let's set it up. Let's set up the play. Oh, God. You know what? Game Trays did a better job this time because there are more trays. There are more trays. That's all, because that's all they're good at. Each person gets one of these. Now set up the rest. Better. It's better. Still not great, but it's better. This is the 2 to 3 player side. You can tell because it says 2 to 3. But we're going to show you on the 4 to 5 player side, which you can tell because it says, it says 4 to 5. Here's the main board. Here's your player area. Here's a bunch of stuff where you're going to go up on tracks. Here's an annoying gnome wheel. And here are all the beautiful little pretty pieces that I have in the Deluxeified edition. But honestly, and I say this all the time with every Burnt Island game, both the deluxe and the retail are great decisions. If you are interested in this game, that's the key. Can't get it if you're not. But if you are, either deluxe or the retail, both of them are always fine. And I think, honestly, retail might even be the play here as well. Here's the deal. The game is going to take place over 3 rounds, where you're going to have to take out all these little itty-bitty annoying gnomes. They're everywhere. They're flying everywhere. They're invading your little trolls moot. You start out by placing your starting layers. That wasn't a place for a layer. This is a place for a layer. There and there. There are always sort of matching symbols. So you can start here. You can start here. You can even start here. You get the picture. They're linked up together. And you're going to start with some trolls on those places. Is my setup triggering anyone? Me too. Now, the game is going to take place in 2 separate phases. There's going to be a phase where you build out your action grid, is what I'll call it, which will determine both how many actions you get in the round and what sorts of actions you can do. This can't be larger than a 6x6 grid, and oh my god, I've already gone 6 across. I've already gone 6 across. I did not plan this out well. But I did get 2 barrels, so my barrels go up by 2. This is going to take place over a draft. You're going to have a handful of cards, you pass them around, you pick your favorite one, rinse and repeat until you've picked 3. Then you're going to have the area control phase where you will use these actions. You can see there are 4 different types of main actions. I know you can see 6 symbols, but these symbols just give you additional actions, and these symbols are elders. They're the elder trolls, that, not the elder scrolls or the elder signs, but they're the elder trolls who just sit in your cave and judge you. But then they'll give you points at the end because they're like, oh, thank you for letting me rest my dogs. So don't worry about those 2 signs. The main signs you want are these green axes, this blue shield, this white little troll paw, and this gnome head. This red little gnome head, because man oh man are those gnomes going to make you angry. You know what? This is a better example for what I am about to show you. Then on your turn, you will choose these actions. Now you can choose just a single action, one of them, that's called a weak action. If you move your barrel, you can do 2 weak actions in a turn. So I'm doing a little weak gnome action, and I'm doing a weak movement action. Or you can do a strong action, where you use more than 1 symbol, or a symbol that's got a 2 on it. So here I'm doing a strong marching action because I'm doing 2 to the strength of 2. These things, as it grows, could be to the strength of 8 in one action, depending upon how you build this little tableau. So what do the actions do? Marching is fairly simple. You march your trolls. Now, opposed to a standard area control game where you would pick that many trolls and move them, You still do, but you must choose the location where they are moving to, and it must be connected by a little troll line. So if I wanted to move people here, let's give myself a few extra trolls. Look at those. Look at them. Wow. Seems like I'm winning. If I wanted to move 2 trolls here, I could move 1 from here, and I could also take this one and trace a line of trolls to move into this space. You choose the location and you move as many trolls as the action allows you to move into that space. They can come from anywhere as long as they are able to get there. Here, now there's a little spot in the middle. These trolls can't get over that gap, so you'd have to only take trolls from this side of the mountain. You'd go like 1, and then you go 2, and now you've broken your line, so this troll can never get there. As a display of the action. That's what the green movement symbol does. The blue movement symbol lets you add trolls to the map. Bam! This is bringing me quite a lot of joy, actually. You can only add trolls to the map where only you are, essentially. You're dominating that cavern, so you have the time to pump out a bunch of little troll babies and train them up to be big, strong troll warriors. Those are the 2 simpler actions. The white claw is fairly simple as well. At least I've heard. I don't know the recipe. There are going to be a number of these special sassy trolls who are just sitting on the sidelines waiting to be seduced by you, influenced by you, but I like to think of it as seducing. You're going to use your little troll claw, your beautiful little troll claw. We're going to do a claw action of 2 right here, and you're going to take your influence and move up 2 on one of these trolls. Now the thing about trolls is they're a very lonely creature. And so if you're the first person to caress them with your beautiful white claw, they get the tingles and they get an extra little boost because they feel special, right? You want to make those trolls feel special. These trolls at the, well, that troll doesn't feel special, but it landed on this. Oh, can I see that as a replay? Wow, that's pretty good. These trolls will both come into your trolls moot area and give you special powers. They might give you an extra strong big troll that you can move around on the map with an ability, or they just might give you a permanent ability that can be used in other things. And they also contribute to these tracks, which need to be set up. Order in the troll! You can see that I've gotten 2 influence on that track because this troll, Whale Wolf, came over to my little troll party. Fighting for influence on this track will also score you a bunch of points. As you can see by the listed numbers here, whoever's furthest up on the track not only is in control of that land and gets to manipulate the gnomes in there. The gnomes come in, they're like, go that way! And the gnomes listen for some reason, even though they're invading. But you also get a bunch of points depending upon the numbers and the number of players. So that's what the little caress action does. And then finally, the gnome wheel, which is over here where this friggin' jerk gnome is sitting out. The gnome wheel allows you to move the big bad gnome on the gnome wheel and do a bunch of different things. You can see that there's the bolster action. You can see that there's the sweet caressing white claw action. And there's also a movement action, but you can move other people's trolls as well. So it's a little bit stronger. The gnome wheel depends upon how many symbols you've played. In this instance, I am moving the gnome wheel 1 with a weak action of 1, and it moves 1 spot, and then I get to move 1 troll on the board. If I happen to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then I would get to move 5 trolls on the board because I would have done it at a strength of 5 on my own action board. So the gnome wheel is kind of like that wild card, but if you abuse the gnome wheel too much, more gnomes will invade because every time the gnome passes that section of the board, they cause 2 gnomes or more to be invaded. If you've murdered more gnomes, then more gnomes will come because they're mad that you killed their friend. So I said we're going to play this for 3 rounds. At the end of each round, you're going to essentially count the number of areas on the board that you own, and you're going to get points in each separate color of area that you own as well, but it's going to be minus points for the number of gnomes that are in there. But don't worry, you're also going to get points to be the first person killed. You're going to get a certain number of points depending upon if you were the first person this first, second, or third round, like this. And there's a bunch of different gnome invasions that happen, so they're all going to come in at various spots, And depending upon the round, you're going to get more bonus points if they die. Now, how the gnomes work is the gnomes, they move in through here and they won't move in to a spot that already has a gnome, and they'll try to go into a space that's free. And if there aren't any spaces that's free, then they're going to target some trolls. And if the trolls are the same strength, they're going to target the one that's closer. And if they're the same closeness, well, then the person who's up on that track is going to get to decide where the gnomes go after they go through this whole pathway. But it couldn't go through that pathway because it goes over here. And now this one's going to keep on moving through and it can get to that spot, so you're safe. And so these trolls are safe. But then don't worry, these gnomes are going to come in. And then this one died first in that specific one. So you're going to get 4 points. And then unfortunately, oh, we don't know which troll is going to die. We're going to shake them up. We're going to throw out a troll right there. And we're going to make sure that another troll dies. And then that troll is going to get 2 points. And then once all the gnomes have invaded, you get 6 points for your first territory that you're controlling in that color, and then you get 2 points for every other territory that you're controlling. But you have to minus 1 point for every gnome place where is taken over in that color. Pretty easy, right? Pretty simple. There's nothing fiddly about that. There's nothing laborious about playing that aspect of the game. No, certainly not. There's nothing laborious about having to do that every time the gnome wheel goes across the line. Certainly not. It makes for a very simple, clean game. Gnome, it doesn't. That's where most of my issues will stem from this game. You have a general overview. It starts out slow. It seems pretty cool. This seems really neat. There's also a really cool action of this puzzle where if you block things off, you then make things connected. So you see how these are all blocked off? I can now do a caressing white claw action of 4 because they're all touching through these blocks. It's a cool puzzle that you get to explore and exploit, and it is hopefully exciting when it gets to this board. Not to mention, you still have to consider that you're going to be fighting for a number of different end game points, depending upon where the trolls are. But when you get over here and you get engaged in the act of moving things around on the board, it just becomes a lot. A lot. And that's really, really unfortunate because I think this is the type of game where, I'll say this again in my final thoughts because people will just skip to it. It's the type of game where if you could play it with people who know the rules cold and all the fiddly little bits and all the implications and all, it could be really, really exciting. All the trolls that you get, all the different abilities that you can add to your slew of people are super cool. It's really cool to up that game. It's really actually an interesting puzzle of trying to be in the most territories. You want to spread out as much as you can, but you don't want to spread out because if somebody else takes over your territory, well, then they get a point in this track. So I can't just leave a little lone troll over here to try to gather up 6 points at the end of the area because somebody might move 2 in and then not only take those points from me, but get to move up on that track. There's a lot going on here in a way that is really interesting and exciting, and also in a way that I don't want to engage with at all. Even the idea of this gnome wheel that people are going to keep abusing, that they're going to be slamming around over and over to get that wild action, to have that flexibility and time it out, feels really cool. And then you still have to go through the process of moving this thing around, deciding the person who triggers it decides where this goes, and then the person who controls this decides where the gnomes go. And so you have these constant stutters, these constant stoppages that really impact the flow of the game. And if you had a group that knew all those stoppages and knew those stutters, then I think this could be a really, really satisfying game. But as it is, I think the barrier to getting to that level is pretty significant. They shouldn't call this Fall of the Mountain King. They should call it the Gall of the Mountain King for making you do all these fiddly little invasions. The last game I played, I just ignored the main board and I pursued an influence strategy with the trolls because it just made it a little bit simpler. There's also the strange balance that you don't get points for being murdered by the gnome wheel, but you do get points for fighting off the final invasion. The implications of how you build your board and your player board have such important ramifications. In this instance, and also in the last game I played, because I was going so heavy on influence, I didn't have many movement points. I only had 2 movement points, and so when it gets to that area control element to it, and you cannot spread around the board, you feel that viscerally, which I think is a good thing. I think that there's a really fun thing between these balances of getting the trolls and vying for all these points versus vying for the control points. I don't know why it's 6 and 2 and -1. I'm sure there's a math reason behind that for it to be balanced with the influence and how many points you're going to average on the influence track, or average with the end game trolls, because the last trolls that you're going to see are sort of end game ones, because they're not going to give you a permanent ability. You get them at the end of the game. So you place them in a spot and you get points based around what's going on in that location. But man, oh man, is it a frustratingly fiddly experience that I think there is a really, really good game trapped underneath it, and a game that I will never play again. Unless I were to play it with people who play this game. Unless I were to play it with the developers. I'd love to play it with the developers, and they can just manage all the fiddliness for me. You know, I'd love to play with people who this is their favorite game, but it's one of those things where the scaling of the game struggles. And so when I first played this game, I played it at 2 players. I played it at 2 players because it's 2 to 5. I always want to try to find that full gamut of player count. And as the first time I played it, well, actually, I had played it, I played half a game at 4 players, and then it went on too long, and we all stopped. And then I got it like a year and a bit later. It was sent to me from Burnt Island, and then I played it at 2 players. And I thought, okay, cool, I hope this works as a 2-player area control experience. And because it's area control, even with the map on the other side, we didn't really interact that much. You know, we felt pretty spread out, we felt like we could, we managed the gnome invasions, whatever. And so I thought, okay, cool, I'm really excited to try this at 5. I want to go to the other side of the player count, right? I bet it's going to sing at 5 if those are the experiences at 2. And when you get to 5 players, it just becomes so fiddly. The more players that I was like, okay, I'll return to the lower player count. I want to see it at 3. At a lower player count, it feels like there isn't as much interaction, which isn't that satisfying in an area control game. And then at a higher player count, well, lo and be gnome, you're going to just hammer on this gnome wheel even more, which is going to cause even more slowdowns and even more stoppage. And the amount of information that there is to process on the board that changes from action to action is fairly significant as well. So there ends up being a lot of downtime, because you have to think, okay, I'm over here now. You have to manage 7 areas, essentially, and everybody's doing that. You're saying, okay, I'm in here, that person's over there, they could move in, I'm kind of safe, I'm winning that battle over here, I'm kind of dealing with this over here, and that's kind of standard area control, right? You want to split your focus, you can't do everything, but at the higher player count, the turns just stretch out, and then when it finally gets to your turn, you do your influence action, and you move up on the influence track. And then it goes around and it stretches out again. And then we've triggered a gnome wheel before you get to go again, and we have to map it out. And then that becomes a decision of, okay, I can move this up to 2 spaces. So I have 5 out of the 7 options that I can touch. If I go here, what's going to happen? The gnomes are going to go this way. If I go here, what's going to happen? The gnomes will kill that person. And because the invasion and the force, the outside force that's impacting in this competitive tower defense game is not easily clear unless you've played it a bunch, it just drags the game down. Like, so I went through that full experience. I started out not knowing how to do it, and then you bet your friggin' butt that I had to learn how to do it efficiently. And then still, when teaching new players, as I brought new players into this game, I was like, hey, don't worry about this. I'm going to tell you where it goes in every aspect. And they're like, okay. I'm like, well, no, it goes here. Like, why? I'm like, well, because it can't go there, It would run through here. It actually makes a pathway across the map to hit here. And that's something that Like, you're not going to get under your belt unless you put in significant effort. And in order to put in that significant effort, that just makes for like such a long game. I played this recently at like a big board game get together, and it took us that was a 5-player game, and it took us 4 hours. You know, it ruined the day because it was so long, because it wasn't that satisfying, and because it's only 3 rounds and it takes that long. There's like a weird disconnect there of the amount of effort that you need to put in to engage with this material and what the material provides. Now, that being said, I still think somehow that this is a good game. It's just not a game that many people should ever get. But the people who do get it and who will like it and who can engage with it, I think will like it a lot. But I think if you're an Omni gamer, this isn't for you, for sure. I felt ashamed that I had wasted everybody's time at this gaming day that we'd set aside for the nothingness of the experience that I got. And yet, it is something that I would play again. I don't know if I'm a sadist, a glutton for punishment. I don't know, but I just like, while it was happening, even that 5-player game, I could see things, and I could see little strategy bits, things that I couldn't engage with on that play because I hadn't built my little sideboard effectively in a way to maneuver around the board, but I was still discovering things, and that discovery was really fun. But I don't know if I could put myself through it again. I really don't know if I could. What's the final score going to be? You'd think with this that the final score would be horrible, but I'm going to give this like a 3.5 out of 5 because I just don't know. It was just so abysmally frustrating and so excruciatingly long in almost every time I played this, except at the lower player counts. And then the area control wasn't as interesting. But I just like, oh, I want to like this so much because I see so much potential here, and it's just bogged down by extraneous factors. So maybe it's a 3.5 out of 5, or maybe it's a 0, maybe it's a 10. I don't know. This is the game that broke me as a person and contributed to my own fall. I felt the ennui of the trolls as I sent wave after wave of gnome invasion into my brain. I don't know. I don't know. That's it. That's all. I'm finishing the video. Goodbye. I don't have a catchphrase. That's it. I don't know. I absolutely adore engaging with this aspect of the puzzle. And I think if you think that thing sounds fun, well, you should check out Smartphone Inc. because Smartphone Inc. does that. And it doesn't take a million years. We actually played both of these on the same day. But this idea and these concepts are so cool. It's just when it gets over to this that this is still really fun to engage with. And wanting to guard yourself about being taken over by someone else, still really interesting, but it just gets bogged down. It gets bogged down without the hope of surfacing for anything else. I don't know. Have you played it? It's like, what's the optimal player count here? 4 and 5 are too long and too fiddly and too many friggin' gnome wheel activations. It's not like the gnome wheel even scales. It's just one. It's not like it has another back to draw things out. So in 2 players, you're going to have so many fewer invasions, but I guess because there's less trolls on the map that you're going to kill. I don't know. and yet you'd think by my tone that this was worse than 3.5. I still think it's a 3.5. I absolutely do. I think there's maybe a really good game here that nobody will ever get to play. But hey, it's Burnt Island, so production quality is insane. They even have a couple more fiddly mini expansions that you could throw in where lava can erupt, and you can have all these different lava cubes that you can scatter out on the field, and then the gnomes might go in or might not, and add in even more just additional fiddly rules as to how the gnomes interact and how the trolls interact, and why would you ever do this? But I want to try it. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe play it at 3 players. Maybe that's the sweet spot. It's the sweetest spot you're gonna get. That's it. Enjoy your day. It's gotta be a 3. It's gotta be a 3. I don't know.